Hello, people. Welcome back to The Struggle, where we dive deep into the most effective ideas, stories, theories, and strategies for overcoming life's challenges. This is episode 65, and this is a special episode because it's my first Q&A episode in which I'll be answering questions from followers, subscribers, friends, and family. Now, this is going to be a bit of a challenge for me because every episode up until this one has been scripted. It's either fully written by me and I read off a teleprompter in the moment, or the questions I'm asking guests are, of course, pre-written. So the difference here is I've not read these questions, except I will say the first few, because I attempted a recording before and the microphone turned off, so I'm redoing it. But the rest of the questions I haven't read before, and so I'm answering them on the fly, which is going to be a challenge and going to be a bit different than the previous episodes, so bear with me with that. But let's get into it. How do you hold on to your sense of identity and passions as you get older, take on responsibilities like family and kids, and start to feel disconnected from the things and friends you once loved without falling into regret or depression? So that's a deep start. So let's take this part by part. How do you hold on to your sense of identity and passions as you get older? So firstly, I would say relinquish this idea of identity, because you are a continually evolving, changing being. And so what you were 10 years ago is different to what you are now. And I don't feel it's productive or meaningful to hold on to what you were before. And I also think longing for what you were before insinuates that you're not good enough now, or that you're lesser than you were before. I think this idea of the self and this idea of identity isn't helpful, because you don't choose your thoughts. There's so much you don't choose. You don't choose the external circumstances in which you find yourself in. You don't choose what country you're born into. You don't choose your family. You don't choose what others around you do or say. And you do not choose your own thoughts. They just come into your head as they please. And so this idea that you are your thoughts, or you are some self or identity, I do not think is helpful for anyone. So I would start with relinquishing this idea of identity. You're continually changing and evolving. That's just a fact. What you apply to that change, the meaning you apply to it, is what really matters. And so accepting the fact that you're continually changing, accepting the fact that you're not the same person you were 10 years ago, accepting the fact that the past is gone. It's over. You can't change it. It's happened. And the present, you can make it however you want it to be. You can make your future however you want it to be. There's power in that. I don't think because the past was great, that means that the future's not going to live up to the same standards as the past did. So know that the future's yours. Know that you can be anything you want to be, and you can make your reality however you want your reality to be. Now, you said, how do you hold on to your sense of passions as you get older? Well, I think maybe a good practice is to write down what your passions are. Now, most people think that following your passion is following something that you love doing and something that's easy. I think it's... I heard someone say this on the Diary of a CEO recently. I'll link it in the show notes. They said something along the lines of, passion is what you are willing to embrace pain for. So this podcast, for instance, is a great example. I'm passionate about it. It's not always easy. It's incredibly difficult to find the motivation to do this podcast, especially when subscribers are so low, or when views are low, or anything like that. But I want to do it. I'm willing to embrace that pain. I'm willing to embrace that difficulty. So first, you need to identify what these passions are. Are these passions the same as they were 10 years ago? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But identify what the passions are, and think about how you can hold on to them if it's what you want to hold on to. Think about if they're a positive influence on your life, and think about how you can hold on to them with these changes in your life as you get older, as you take on responsibilities like family and kids. Think about how you can hold on to these passions, because it's important to do that. You might find it selfish to follow your passions or to partake in activities that you're passionate about when you have kids and you have a family, but that is part of caring for your family, because you're caring for yourself, and when you care for yourself, you're in a better position to help others. And so it's not a selfish act to take care of yourself. And of course, like, I'm coming at this from a place where I don't have kids, but I'd like to think that with my free time dwindled, of course, when you have kids, I'd like to think that I would still find some time for things I'm passionate about, like guitar or doing this podcast, because I know that they are self-caring behaviors, but they're also caring for other people, because I'm in a better position to help. Now, you said you start to feel disconnected from the things and friends you once loved without falling into regret or depression. How can I not feel disconnected from the things and friends you once loved without falling into regret or depression? Well, again, I think this is one of these solutions where awareness is half the battle. You said the things and the friends you once loved. So identify, what are these things and what friends did you once love? And do you regret not being in their lives anymore and them not being in yours? If you do, reach out. Reach out to these friends. If they were as important as you believe they were, and if they are as loving as you remember them to be, they will embrace the message you've sent and they will reconnect with you. You feel disconnected from things and friends you once loved, and if you regret that or you're depressed about it, reconnect with these things. Reconnect with these friends. Your time's limited. God, we know that. Time is limited. And so what's the point in regretting this disconnection? Why not just reconnect? And so that it's not likely that you're going to regret reconnecting, but it's likely that you're going to regret not reconnecting. So reconnect with these things and friends that you once loved. And another note on regret. Regretting things is not helpful. You are always doing the best you can with the limited knowledge you have. You just are. And so lambasting yourself for not having the information that you have now isn't helpful. You had a limited knowledge base then, and regretting that isn't helpful. You learn the lesson from it and increase your knowledge base so that that mistake isn't likely to happen again. But lambasting yourself for something that you didn't have any control over in some sense isn't productive. It's not helpful. It's not helping anyone. And so try and relinquish your tendency to regret things and think about the mistakes you've made and try to learn from them. Or, as you say, as I've said before, try not to remain disconnected from things you once loved and friends you once loved and family you once loved. If you want to reconnect, do it, because you'll regret not doing it more than you'll regret doing it. Okay, in a recent study from Sapien Labs, the UK ranked second in the world for poor mental health. Whether we blame overuse of phones or post-COVID blues, I wonder what your thoughts are on that statistic. Is the UK just better at recognising mental health issues? Nordic countries with low crime rates, promotion of gender equality leading to progressive policies for parents and good work-life balance seem to have it right. In your opinion, can Scotland learn from other cultures to help our mental health epidemic? Okay, there's quite a few questions in there, so let's start at the start. In a recent study from Sapien Labs, the UK ranked second in the world for poor mental health. Whether we blame overuse of phones or post-COVID blues, I wonder what your thoughts are on this statistic. Well, I'm not surprised that that's the case. I've seen that statistic. What I found baffling is that countries like Yemen, which is currently undergoing a horrific humanitarian crisis, ranked happier than the UK. Now, it's baffling, but it's not surprising. And there are a plethora of reasons why the UK ranks so low, I believe. Yeah, post-COVID blues is one, and overuse of technology is certainly one. But I think in a broader sense, privilege is one. I think the majority of us in the UK, have it pretty good in global terms. We live in a fairly equal society. Women are not horrifically oppressed, and homosexuality isn't outlawed. So I think in those terms, we're pretty lucky. Now, I'll caveat that by saying, is it a completely equal society? No. Is it a completely fair society? No. But I think one thing we're in danger of in countries like the UK and the US is we make so much progress that we only concentrate on how much further we have to go rather than concentrating on how far we've come. If you look at the UK and US, the amount of progress we've made in terms of poverty statistics, equality, it's incredible what we've done. It's incredible what we've done in the last 5-10 years. Now, of course, there's obviously problems. There's massive problems in the UK and the US, but we have it pretty good. Most of us have it pretty good. And I recently, hold on, what was his name? There was a Thomas Chatterton Williams, an author. He was on Bill Maher's show, and his idea was that the more progress we make, the smaller inequalities, the more they get to us, the more they overwhelm us. Because if you look at the 40s, the 50s and 60s, and the rampant racism that went on there, and the horrific racism that went on in those times, they had never heard of a microaggression. And there's a reason for that. They had other problems. They had bigger, much bigger problems to deal with. And I am not saying that racism doesn't exist now, but we've made a lot of progress with regards to racism, for instance. And so I do believe that because we've come so far, what needs to be dealt with now is, I don't want to say smaller in comparison, but racism is not as big a problem as it was in the 50s and 60s. And so we're going to focus on smaller and smaller instances and smaller issues in society, because that's the nature of human beings. But I think in the UK we have a tendency to focus on the negative, to focus on what's going wrong, rather than focusing on how far we've come and how lucky we are. So I think that's part of it. I think the UK also has this culture of the tallest poppy gets cut, and so if you're ever ambitious or you want to better yourself or better your life, you're told to, in like varying ways, to get your head out the clouds. So I think that's part of it specific to the UK. But there's a plethora of things. And I'll caveat again, I'm aware that there's a lot of people, too many people, living in poverty in the UK. Far too many people are homeless in the UK for such a rich country. Far too many people experience racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and the rest of it. But we've also made a hell of a lot of progress, and that's my point. And I think part of it in the UK, the reason that we're so depressed, is because we have so much that we've gotten into this habit of craving more stuff and craving more money, and I think the more we crave these things, the more we are insinuating that we have less now and that we'll be happier when we have more. But of course that's never the case, and it's probably the opposite, that the more you strive for more, the less content you're going to be in the moment. And so that's some general reasons I believe that the UK is ranked, second to last, was it? Second to last? Second in the world for poor mental health, yeah. So that's the UK. Now, is the UK just better at recognising mental health issues? I think this comes back to the kind of privileged aspect of this. I think the freer a country is and the better off a country is, the more time people have and the more space people have to contemplate their mental health. You're not going to find people in war-torn countries contemplating how they feel and what their mental health is like. I can't imagine anyway. When there's bombs flying overhead or when you're horrifically oppressed, I can't imagine you've got a lot of time to consider your mental health and your meditation practice and all the rest of it. But are we better at recognising mental health issues? I wouldn't say better. I think there's more awareness of mental health issues, and there's still so much to do, and there's still so much we don't know about certain mental health issues. Um, but we're certainly on the right path. There's a hell of a lot of issues with regards to mental health treatment. Even like I've been looking at ADHD diagnoses, and in some health boards, it's looking like I'm going to have to wait about 3 or 4 years before I get a diagnosis. That's a problem, and it's like the government might say there's not enough money for the NHS. There definitely is, but it's just not spent in the correct way. But is the UK just better at recognising mental health issues? I think we're more aware, and I think that's because we live in a kind of a lot of us live in a privileged are in a privileged position to contemplate our mental health, and so I believe that that's probably the case. But I also think we aren't content with less. We are continually trying to have more and achieve more, um, and I think that historically comes down to um, what British people were like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. There's that sort of Protestant Catholic work ethic. Um, I don't know if it's Protestant or Catholic or both with the work ethic, but that certainly has a part to play. But Nordic countries, that's the next part. Nordic countries with low crime rates, promotion of gender equality leading to progressive policies for parents, and good work-life balance seem to have it right. Yeah, I would agree. I know taxes are very high in these places, but yeah, they seem to have a lot of things right. I think Scotland is a front runner for a lot of. They've been the front runner in the UK, for instance, in certain progressive policies like I know period health and things like that. Um, and I think also you said in your opinion, can Scotland learn from other cultures, to help our mental health epidemic? They certainly can in terms of drug policies. We have a massive drug problem here in Scotland, and I think for the last what decade that SNP were in power, they did continually promise safe drug consumption rooms and never followed through on that promise. But I think we're on the right path. I think we're discussing, in terms of drug use, we are discussing it in a more empathetic and compassionate way. Knowing that people don't choose to be addicted to drugs, they didn't make their choices. They had terrible lives that led them to overuse and just use drugs in problematic ways. So I think we could learn from other countries in that respect. Portugal being one that decriminalised all drugs and saw drug overdoses, the rates fall dramatically. Homelessness is a big problem in Scotland that needs to be addressed. I think we just need to be more aware of mental health issues, and more aware that people's circumstances play a massive role in how people feel, and we need to ensure that people's circumstances are not set up for them to fail mentally. So what does that mean? That means that everyone has enough money to live and to prosper. Everyone has some form of work to do, some job they can do and feel passionate about, that they've got some purpose. If it's their job or their family or their kids or whoever, they've got some sort of meaning and purpose in their lives. So yeah, I think Scotland could learn a lot from other cultures regarding this mental health epidemic, as you say. Right, next. What, if anything, is the purpose of a human being? I usually answer these sorts of questions from two aspects, objective and subjective. Objectively, I look at evolution. What is the purpose of a human being? It's the same as every other animal. It's to survive and reproduce. That's it. Keep their bloodline going. That's the purpose of a human being. But other than that, if we're talking philosophically, what's the purpose of a human being? There is no inherent purpose of a human being, just like there's no inherent purpose of a dog. A dog just does what it pleases. It's not considering its life. It's not considering the existential. It's considering where it's going to take a piss, where it's going to take a shit, where it's going to eat, what it's going to shag, but we, humans are different in that regard. We contemplate why, we contemplate the philosophical and the existential. So the purpose of a human being is individual. It's subjective. What your purpose is and how to determine what your purpose is, I would say it comes back to the passion aspect. What difficulties are you willing to undergo for some higher goal or for some higher purpose? What pain are you willing to endure? What's something that you're willing to do for years without any external reward? You're only doing for the internal reward of it. This podcast, again, is a good example. I've been doing it for a year and a half. There's been no financial reward, little external validation, but I do it because it satisfies my psychological being. It provides me with meaning. I'm passionate about it. I'm willing to undergo the difficulty. Now, of course, I am hoping there is external validation in the future, whether that be from just praise or financially, but I'm willing to do this for years before that happens. And so I would say, find whatever it is that you are willing to do for years for no external validation, only for your internal validation. Okay, what's next? Do you know the Muffin Man? Yeah, lives on Drury Lane. Nice guy, high voice. What's one routine you recommend everyone should do? That's a tough one because everyone's circumstances are so different and certain people can benefit from different things. What's one thing everyone should do? I would say some form of mindfulness. It doesn't have to be a formal meditation practice, but if you can punctuate your day with some awareness, some bringing yourself back to the present, realizing you've been lost in thought that whole time, identifying what the thoughts are, or it could be some formal practice of sitting for 10 minutes in silence and just observing your thoughts, observing the sounds, and just being more present. Because the more technologically advanced we get, the more progress we make, the more easily distracted we are. And a superpower that everyone can have is that mindfulness, meditation, that awareness of the present moment. Because there are so many aspects of life, modern life, that are trying to pull you out of the present. Because if you were present, you'd realize how fine it is. It's not going to spike your dopamine. It's not something that's exaggerated or fabricated. The present is all there is, and it's fine. It's not terrible. It's not scary. You don't have to run from it. And I think companies especially want to pull you out of the present because they want you to think about what you don't have now and think about what more you could get out of life. And that's just not helpful. So what routine would I recommend everyone do? Some form of mindfulness practice. I'll link some various apps and practices down below for anyone that wants to try those. If you could be any fictional character, who would you be and why? That's a good question. I think the first one that came to mind is Bilbo Baggins, and the reason for that is I think it's as much as his the adventure he goes on in The Hobbit is crazy and chaotic. It's also very simple because real life, the reality of life now is there's so much to worry about, and there's so many things to think about on the kind of grand scale and on the local scale, and the psychological scale, and the existential scale, and the philosophical scale. There's so much to think about. You've got to contemplate what you're going to do next, literally next, what you're going to do next year, what you're going to do next week, what your life means, what you're going to do with your life, who you're going to end up with, what job you're going to do. You need to see this person, you need to see this person, and all that stuff. But the beauty of The Hobbit is that the symbols within that story are symbolizing those kind of struggles that we all go through and the obstacles that we have to overcome. And it would just be nice if those obstacles were just, obstacles, literal obstacles in front of you that you could see, and you knew when you overcame them. You know when you've overcome the dragon, you know when you've overcome the trolls and the goblins and all that stuff. And then he just seems at the end, like in The Lord of the Rings and the end of The Hobbit, content. He did the thing. He realized what the meaning of his life was and what he himself needed, and went out and done it. And then he was content. And I long for the days in which I can sit down and know that I've done the thing and it paid off and I'm content with it. So that's the fictional character I would be. How do you grow such a nice beard? Well, as much as it is a full beard, there are, of course, always trade-offs. Quote I always mention is, there are no solutions, only trade-offs, and the trade-off of having such a nice beard is losing your hair. I have this theory that if you're losing your hair, you've probably got a really nice beard, and the trade-off is you either have nice hair and not a great full beard, or you have a nice full beard and no hair. So that's the trade-off. So I wouldn't be so jealous of such a nice beard. It's also just it's just nice having a beard if I know I'm not going to have any hair on top. How do I grow such a nice beard? There's genetics. You can't really control that. I mean, there are such things as beard transplants and growth serums and stuff like that, but if you've got a full head of hair and not great beard growth, then don't be so jealous of me, because that's a trade-off I'm paying. Anyway, or are your primary sources of motivation, and where do these fit on the following scales? Oh, interesting. Internal, external, related, individual, societal, conscious, unconscious, healthy, unhealthy. Do any of these scales correlate with one another? Oh, I think I know who wrote this question. What are your primary sources of motivation? Where do these fit on the following scales? Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to identify my primary source of motivation on these scales, and which ones drive me more. So internal, external. Internally, what drives me? There is a psychological need to somewhat prove myself, and that comes from varying aspects of my past. I experienced certain things when I was growing up, things, bullying and trying to find my place in the world, and trying to get external praise and believing that that's what's going to fill me up. And so I do have this, I don't know how to describe it. I have this disposition to do things that people might find impressive, or to do things that people might find might look up to me for. So there's an internal source of motivation, and an external source. I mean, that can be external as well, because I'm looking for external sources of validation. but also externally, look, I know it's a cliche and a lot of people don't want to admit this, but money is certainly a motivation for me. I want to make enough money to enjoy my life, and people like to say like money doesn't make you happy. Look on the scale. It does up until a certain point. I can't remember how much money it is. Maybe like it's like 80 grand or 100 grand a year, and then it kind of plateaus, and at a certain point it goes down. But yeah, from like 20 grand to 80 grand, your happiness will go up. I always say like I want enough money to go to a restaurant randomly, order what I want, and not be paying attention to the prices. That's not a crazy amount of money, but money is certainly part of it. Whether fame is, I don't think it is. I like it would obviously be. I do. There is part of me that wants that sort of validation from lots of people, but there's also a part of me that really doesn't want that. That would rather be competent and rich than rich and famous. So there's an external source of motivation. What's next? Individual, societal. Individual. On an individual level, what primary sources of motivation do I have? But I mean, you put related, so it is pretty related to the internal. I also just don't want to get to the end of my life and wonder what if. I'm trying to live my life in such a way that I can be proud of myself. And on a societal level, I mean that is related to the external, the financial and the external validation that perhaps I'm seeking. On a societal level, I also I want to help people. I've been going to therapy for maybe 2 years now, and it's been one of the most cathartic and meaningful experiences of my life. And I know that isn't available to everyone, and I know that some people can't afford it or don't have the time for it, or there's a whole host of reasons why someone might not be able to go to therapy. So I want to give people at least 1% of that experience. And this, to me, is the best way I can do that. It covers a lot of bases for me doing this podcast. And that's one of the primary sources of motivation for doing this podcast, is to help people, to give people something similar to the experience I've had during therapy. Conscious, unconscious, that's kind of been covered with the internal and the external. Like, I'm obviously conscious of these things. And unconscious, it's hard to answer because I'm unconscious of it, but I think, like my childhood certainly plays an unconscious role in what I'm doing now and what I'm not doing now. Another unconscious, up until now, motivation I think for me has been ADHD, possibly. I've been toying with the idea that I might have it, and I think the reason it's maybe gone unchecked is because I've thought of ADHD as, the cliched idea that you can't concentrate on anything and you're a bother in school, and you can't read or you can't pay attention very well, when in reality it's more just an inability to focus attention. Now, I'm very good at focusing my attention on things that I'm very interested in, but if I'm not interested in something, I find it extremely difficult to focus my attention on that, whether that be conversations or subjects at school or anything like that. And I think because I did well in certain subjects at school and I did well at university, because I was doing things I was interested in, it went unchecked. So I think a significant part of the reason for why I do what I do is because I'm extremely interested in it, and I can't really have it any other way. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to focus on it. Healthy and unhealthy. Healthy, I mean, it certainly, what I'm doing, a lot of what I do is healthy. Exercising is healthy. Doing this podcast is healthy. Eating healthy is healthy. Where I maybe fall into the unhealthy category is when I'm doing things to a fault. So if I'm focused so much on being healthy and productive that I neglect other things in my life that are meaningful to me, and also just this this kind of drive to be productive and to prove myself and things like that, it's a never-ending drive, and so I'm never actually going to achieve these things. And so when I feel like I'm not going to achieve these things, or when that drive becomes too much, I turn to problematic behaviors, whether it's like social media, junk food, pornography, things like that. And that's to almost intensely distract myself, intensely force myself to stop running, almost. That's the only way that I can do that. And that's what I've been working through in the last 2 years of therapy, is trying to figure out how to stop, and to know that stopping's okay, and that the present's okay, and that I don't have to run, and there's nothing to be scared of in the present. So yeah, there's an unhealthy one. Now, do any of these scales correlate with one another? Yeah, I mean, and you can probably tell that a lot of these things I've just mentioned all are tightly connected to one another. ADHD being linked to childhood experience, and it also has a genetic component, which can then lead to almost over interest in certain things, and that can lead to distracting yourself and things like that. So yeah, these skills definitely correlate with one another. You can definitely tell. Okay, what advice would you give for dealing with imposter syndrome? Okay. Okay, I've got 2 things for that, and the first one's going to seem a bit harsh. I recently watched Finn Taylor, a comedian. He had a special on YouTube. I'll link it below, and he talked about imposter syndrome and how we used to have. I'm going to butcher this, and it's going to sound really harsh because I'm not a comedian and I don't have quite the timing or the intelligence that he has. But we used to use syndrome for extremely serious mental issues. And he said he has a friend who said, I'm just really struggling with imposter syndrome, and I just don't feel like I'm like good at my job, and it keeps coming up, and I just feel like I'm not good at my job. And Finn Taylor says, you might just not be good at your job. And of course that does sound harsh, and I'm not saying that you are bad at whatever it is you're dealing with, and whatever it is that you're telling yourself that you're bad at, or that you're an imposter to, that it isn't real and you're not experiencing it. But one piece of advice I would give is it comes from Alex Hormozy, by the way, build an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. Now, the likelihood is you already have a pretty big stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. So what is it? Is it your job? So look at your job and what you do, and where's the proof that you are good at that job? You will have proof. You will have done things. You will have, I don't know, made deals. You will have achieved things in your job. Where's the undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are? Because if you have that stack of proof, you're not an imposter. So that's the advice I would give. I've never really dealt with that so much. I mean, there's a part of me that's dealing with it right now because, like I said at the start of this episode, I've never done an episode where I'm answering things on the fly and it's unscripted. And part of me is thinking, I don't know enough to give this advice, or I'm not qualified to give this advice. So I'm experiencing it a bit right now, but I just remind myself that I've got 64 episodes under my wing. I have a philosophy master's degree. I have a digital society master's degree. I have 2 years of therapy under my wing. I have an undeniable stack of proof that I am a podcaster, that I have advice to give. I have to remind myself that what I'm doing here might be valuable for at least one person. And if it is, then I'm doing my job correctly. So that's what I would say. Just find the undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. That's how to counteract imposter syndrome in my book anyway. Okay, when you find yourself in a negative mindset, what do you do to help change your mentality? Well, like I said before, I unhealthily probably distract myself with problematic behaviours, but what I want to do more of and able to counteract a negative mindset is presence, It's becoming aware of that negative self-talk and sitting with it. Because for me anyway, when a negative thought comes in, or when I'm feeling stressed, or when I'm feeling anxious, I turn to distracting, problematic, highly dopaminergic behaviors like pornography or social media or junk food. But if we just stopped and were able to identify that negative thought and sit with it, we'd realize that eventually it will just dissipate very, very quickly, and we just can take a few deep breaths, realize that the present moment is okay, and nothing's as bad as we think it is, because that's true. I mean, nothing's as good as we think it's going to be, and nothing's as bad as we think it's going to be, and that's the present moment. It's never as extreme as we expect it to be. And so just stopping and realizing that truth can, I believe, really help counteract a negative mindset, and to realize how okay it is, and how what you're fearing and what you're running from isn't something to be feared or run from. So yeah, I think that's one thing I want to do to counteract a negative mindset. I'm clearly no expert in doing that, so that's the advice I would give. When I have more to say on that topic, I will. I will be doing more of these question and answer episodes at the various milestones of the podcast, like subscriber counts and episode numbers and stuff like that. So I will come back to this topic, and hopefully I'll have a better answer than that. At what point does the motivation to be productive become problematic? So I've kind of touched on that, but it's when you put all of your self-worth on what you do and what you're going to do and what your future looks like. It's when you think, here's where I want to be, I'm not good enough now until I'm where I want to be. And then you repeat that cycle when you get to where you want to be, and you have a new yardstick to aim at. So when it gets problematic is when you start to believe that your present self, the way you are right now, is not good enough until you have this pair of shoes, until you have this item of clothing or jewelry or car or house, or when you've achieved this certain thing. So it becomes a problem when you put all of your faith into the future. And the majority of the answers I'm giving here are just, they all have the same solution. It's just fucking be present. Just realize that the present moment isn't nearly as horrifying or as terrifying as we unconsciously make it out to be in our daily lives, because we distract ourselves so much that you would think the present moment is terrifying and scary, but it's not. It never is. It's fine. And I'm not saying there's obviously horrors in the world and people are experiencing horrific things, but for a lot of us, and the majority of people listening or watching this, the present moment's okay. Appreciate it, because your life isn't guaranteed, and you might not have a lot of time on this earth. You certainly don't, even if you live to 100. You don't have that much time. So, okay, sorry, we're back. My memory card ran out of memory. So, where were we? Okay, productivity becomes problematic when the present becomes not good enough and your future is where you believe all of your happiness is going to come from. I think that's probably the main way. Now, what is your ultimate goal in life? Okay, there's a few. One is to eventually be content, or have, I know I'm never going to be content every day of every hour, every minute, but I would like to have more moments of contentness, of knowing that I'm okay and life is good, and not thinking about the future so much. I want more of my time to be made up of those feelings of contentness when we realize how great our lives are, how lucky we are, how much we should appreciate in life. Another goal is to help as many people as I can, to help people become the people they want to be, to live the life they want to live. And to continually experience the love of others, and to continually experience love, loving others, because the majority of the experiences when I look back at my life that are the most meaningful are when I'm with other people, when I'm with family and friends and my partner. That's the moments that I'll look back on with fondness and be happy that I experienced those experiences. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to look back at the workouts I do. I'm not going to look back on the to-do lists I wrote. I'm going to look back on the experiences I had with other people. Now, productivity can foster that. It can make those experiences more abundant and more likely to occur. If you're productive, you might achieve more, you might make more money, you might have more free time, all of this stuff. But ultimately, you're going to look back at the moments in life that were meaningful, and those experiences are usually with other people. So I want to experience love, both giving and receiving. Okay, I believe that is all the questions I have. Thank you so much to everyone that left a question. This was just an experiment, but I actually really enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. I hope you found something useful or interesting there. Like I said before, I will be doing more of these question and answer episodes. I'll probably do what Chris Williamson does and film them at specific milestones of the podcast. So when I reach a certain number of subscribers, when I reach a certain episode number, that sort of thing. But yeah, let me know if you enjoyed this episode. Let me know any questions at any time. If you've got any questions, I will copy and paste them and put them in a document for the next one. But yeah, the answer always lies in the struggle. So keep on struggling and take care.